Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through the noise, find the key insights from important sources, and help you get up to speed fast. Today, we're jumping right into something pretty significant that's happening at the crossroads of, well, global trade, advanced science, and national policy. It all kicked off with a really eye-popping development in the Indian pharmaceutical world. Yeah, a massive $2 billion deal for a cancer drug. Signed just last week between India's Glenmark Pharma and the U.S. company AbbVie. The drug's called ISB 2001, still experimental. So, our mission today: to explore how this one deal, which is huge, kind of shines a light on the bigger picture for India's entire $50 billion pharma industry. It really feels like the industry is at a critical point, facing challenges from global trade shifts, but also from its own rules back home. Understanding this helps us grasp a piece of where medicine might be heading and what it could mean for you. Okay, let's start right there with that Glenmark deal. $2 billion for an experimental drug license. That's not your everyday transaction in Indian pharma, is it?
No, not at all. It's a really significant number, and it immediately makes you ask, okay, what's so special here? And what makes ISB 2001 stand out, the reason for that price tag, is pretty fascinating. It's what they call a first-in-class bispecific antibody.
Okay, bispecific antibody. Break that down a bit.
Yeah, so think of it like a highly engineered molecule, really sophisticated stuff. It's designed to grab onto two different targets on a cancer cell at the same time. Essentially, it helps train your own immune system to find and destroy cancer cells much more precisely. This one's aimed at relapsed multiple myelomas, so for patients whose cancer has come back or stopped responding to other treatments.
Wow, okay, so very targeted.
Very. And it's still early days, technically phase 1 trials, which mostly look at safety. But it's already got some special flags from the FDA in the U.S. to potentially speed up its development because the early signs are promising. The key thing here, though, is that this is about deep R&D, original science, new intellectual property. It's a world away from the generic drug manufacturing that India is so well known for globally.
Right, so it's not just copying an existing drug after the patent runs out. This is something new.
Exactly, foundational work.
So this feels like more than just a big check. It's maybe a strategic signal. But is it just a one-off? Or does it hint at a bigger shift happening across India's massive pharma sector? Because I guess to really get why this deal matters so much, we need to understand the context, right? The sort of tightrope walk this $50 billion industry is already on.
Yeah, that's precisely it. You have to look at the bigger picture. The Indian pharma industry is huge, valued at over $50 billion. And it's very export-driven. More than half of what they produce gets shipped overseas.
Okay.
But here's the crucial part.
All right.
Its dependence on the U.S. market is enormous. Over a third of all those exports head straight to the United States.
And the bread and butter historically has been generics, right? Making those off-patent drugs, the ones where the original company's exclusive rights have expired.
Exactly. Think paracetamol or common antibiotics. The molecule's the same, but lots of companies make it, competition is fierce, and that drives prices way down.
Which has been great for global health, making medicines affordable. But you mentioned those razor-thin margins. That sounds like a vulnerability. How does that low margin make them susceptible to, say, potential changes in U.S. policy?
It's a critical weakness because the whole model relies on selling huge volumes with very little profit on each pill or vial. So the question becomes, what happens if the U.S., their single biggest customer, decides it wants to pay even less?
Right.
And we've heard him talk about this. Former President Trump, for instance, was very vocal about wanting to slash drug prices, maybe by 30%, maybe even up to 80% in some cases.
That would be a massive cut.
Huge. And while that's framed as savings for American consumers, you can see how it would directly hit Indian manufacturers operating on already tiny margins. There was also a proposal floated, the most favored nation pricing model. The idea there was that Medicare, the U.S. government health program for seniors, would peg its prices to the lowest price paid among other wealthy countries.
So find the cheapest price globally among similar economies and match it.
Basically, yes. The aim is clearly to push prices down. Now, Indian generics probably wouldn't face direct import duties or tariffs under that model. But if the invoice price itself is forced lower, your margins shrink even further, and that's before you even account for shipping, insurance, regulatory hurdles. It puts immense pressure on the bottom line.
Okay, so faced with this kind of pressure, this uncertainty from their biggest market, what's the industry doing? What are the strategies, both sort of immediate fixes and maybe longer-term plays?
Well, for the immediate term, sort of a defensive move, many larger Indian companies have been buying up manufacturing plants in the U.S. and other countries.
Setting up shop directly over there.
Exactly. Sun Pharma, for example, has, I think, over 3 facilities now in the U.S. Cipla has a major presence. Aurobindo Pharma has bought several smaller plants. Doing this helps them kind of cushion the blow from potential tariffs or maybe smooth out shipping costs. It gives them a local foothold.
Makes sense. But that doesn't really change the fundamental business model, right? They're still mostly making generics, just in a different location.
Precisely. It tackles logistics and maybe some trade friction, but it doesn't address the core issue of relying on those low-margin generics. The real long-term solution, and this is where it connects back to that Glenmark deal and gets, frankly, much more exciting, is moving up the value chain.
Meaning?
Meaning investing seriously in research and development, creating new drugs, innovative treatments, novel vaccines, especially for diseases where maybe there aren't enough good options right now.
Okay, so shifting from copying existing drugs to inventing new ones.
Yes, because that's where the significant margins are. Unlike generics with those, as you said, wafer-thin profits, coming up with a novel therapy gives you pricing power. You get market exclusivity for a longer period. The value per molecule is just vastly higher.
And the Glenmark deal for ISB 2001, that's a perfect illustration of that kind of move, right? Developing something original and potentially very valuable.
Exactly. It's the poster child for this desired strategic shift towards higher value innovation.
Okay, moving up the value chain, investing in R&D, creating novel drugs. It sounds like the obvious path forward for profitability and resilience. But I imagine it's not quite that simple. You hinted earlier that there are hurdles, maybe even hurdles rooted in India's own system, its patent laws.
That's absolutely right. Climbing that innovation ladder, as you put it, is much easier said than done. And a big part of the complexity comes from India's domestic patent laws. See, the main law, the Indian Patents Act, especially after amendments in 2005, was really designed with a crucial goal in mind, ensuring affordable access to medicines for its population.
Which is vital, especially in a country where public healthcare spending isn't very high, relatively speaking.
Extremely vital, and the law has specific features built in to achieve that affordability. There are a few key ones. One is Section 3. That's often called the anti-evergreening clause.
Anti-evergreening.
Yeah, it basically says you can't get a new patent just for making a small tweak to an existing drug like a new form or salt, unless you can prove it results in significantly better therapeutic efficacy. It stops companies from extending monopolies through minor changes.
Okay, makes sense for keeping generics coming. What else?
Then there's Section 107A, sometimes called the Bowler exemption. This lets Indian companies start manufacturing and doing the groundwork, like clinical trials needed for regulatory approval, before the patent on the original drug actually expires.
So they can be ready to launch their generic version almost immediately after the patent ends.
Pretty much. It speeds up generic entry. Then you have Section 84, which allows for compulsory licensing.
Compulsory licensing sounds serious.
It means under certain conditions, like if the drug isn't available enough or isn't priced affordably or isn't being manufactured sufficiently in India, the government can grant a license to another company to produce the patented drug, even without the patent holder's consent, after 3 years.
Wow, okay.
And finally, there's Section 92A, which allows for similar compulsory licenses specifically for exporting drugs to countries that lack their own manufacturing capacity, especially during public health crises.
So these rules are all clearly geared towards getting cheaper medicines out there, both within India and sometimes abroad.
Absolutely. They've been incredibly effective in making India the pharmacy of the world for affordable drugs. But here's the other side of the coin.
The double-edged sword.
Exactly. While these provisions ensure affordability, they also create intense domestic competition the moment a drug meets these criteria or its patent nears expiry. Multiple companies jump in, they all start producing, and boom, prices plummet, which is great for consumers, but
It makes it really hard for an Indian company that did invest potentially billions in developing a new innovative drug to recoup that investment domestically, right? Because competitors can potentially come in relatively quickly or under certain conditions.
precisely. It dampens the financial incentive for that high-risk, high-cost novel R&D within the Indian market itself. Why spend massively on innovation if your potential returns within India could be limited by these pro-access provisions?
So there's this fundamental tension. The very laws that made India a global leader in affordable generics might also be holding back its ability to become a leader in cutting-edge drug discovery.
That's the core dilemma. You have this incredibly successful model built on accessibility, but moving to the next stage, becoming an innovator nation, might require revisiting some of those rules. And that's tricky because you have to balance the drive for innovation with ensuring affordability for, the common person. What's good for you and me needing medicine today versus building the industry of tomorrow?
What a fascinating tightrope walk. It's like trying to fuel a rocket ship for future exploration while making sure everyone on the ground still has enough basic fuel to live. Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. What we've seen in this deep dive is that India's pharma industry, this global powerhouse, has a potential vulnerability because of its heavy reliance on low-margin generics, especially with pricing pressures potentially coming from its biggest market, the US. The path to more resilience, the way forward, seems to be climbing that value chain, investing in novel R&D, developing unique therapies, complex treatments, and that huge Glenmark deal. It's like a flashing signpost pointing in that direction.
Right, it exemplifies that ambition.
We know there's some immediate activity, like the current Indian delegation in Washington trying to negotiate trade terms, which might offer some short-term protection for exporters.
A sort of bandage, perhaps.
Yeah, a temporary measure.
Yeah.
But the real sustainable long-term fix seems to lie in fundamentally shifting focus, investing in creating new therapies, not just making copies of old ones.
That certainly seems to be the strategic consensus emerging. It's a pivotal moment.
Absolutely. So this deep dive really shows that India's pharmaceutical journey ahead isn't just about continuing to supply affordable medicines. It's about a really high-stakes gamble on innovation. Get it right, and they could reshape their industry and contribute even more profoundly to global health. Get it wrong, and that reliance on generics could leave them exposed. So the final thought for you, our listener, is this. As India tries to navigate this incredibly complex path, balancing its identity as the world's generic pharmacy with this new ambition to be a hub for cutting-edge science, what does this delicate dance mean? This balance between global competition, the critical need for affordable medicine at home, and the pursuit of breakthrough cures. What does it all mean for the future of medicine? And ultimately, what might it mean for you?